Alright, well it seems we're getting super international for this particular episode of Sci-Fi Night. Hello and welcome to Sci-Fi Night, where we check out some of the lesser known sci-fi and horror movies out there and let you know what to expect from them. I'm your host, Sebastian Vendel Martinez, and in this particular episode, in celebration of a Halloween holiday, we're checking out not one, but two movies. So, to join us are our Australian buddy Fedora from Oh Horror, and we're gonna actually try to present a horror film from our own part of the world.
Good day there, mate. I just returned from the outback after cooking a certain species of crustacean aboard a portable cooking apparatus. Because that's what we all do here in Australia, right according to these lines you sent me, you goddamn racist.
Oh yeah, this is my show, which means I wrote the script, which means I'm in control.
Well, if you put half as much effort into writing as you did with visual effects, you might have a half-decent show.
Oh, I'm sorry, what's that? I couldn't hear you over your 1950s aspect ratio.
Oh, ouch! You hit me right in the 3 times as many subscribers as you. Tell you what, I may not have a whole Swedish support team backing me up, but I'm sure as hell I can review a Scandinavian horror movie a hell of a lot better than you can.
Oh yeah? Well, to quote Busta Rhymes,
trick or treat, motherfucker.
How about I review your Australian film, you review my Nordic film, and we'll see who pulls it off better.
Dead Snow, or as it's spelt in its native tongue, D. Shoktimoti D. S.N. Shoktimoti, is written and directed by Tommy Wirkola, my favourite flavour of cola, who aside from Dead Snow 1 and 2, also directed Hansel and Gretel Witch Hunters. It stars... oh, Jesus Christ. Vigar Powell, Stig Frode Hurskin, and...
Hey, us Scandinavians don't all sound like that.
Basically, this is about a group of Norwegians who decide to take a trip up to a secluded cabin in the mountains to relax, have some fun, and try to avoid the inevitable deadly evil that lurks in every secluded mountain cabin ever.
The hell is this? Don't they have Evil Dead in Scandinavia? Is Norway a third world country?
The cliches continue as Nordic Crazy Ralph shows up to do his job as official plot explainer and informs the group that during the Nazi occupation, the Germans were driven into the mountains by revolting villagers, and though it's assumed all the Nazis died, it's rumoured that they live on as the most overused monster type of the 21st century.
Den ondskapen. En ondskap man ikke vil vekke.
Haven't these guys seen The Thing? When Norwegians take on monsters, it doesn't tend to go very well for them.
Obviously the Nazi zombies, taking a break from their day job over at Call of Duty, appreciate the shout out they get from the old man, and show up on cue, attacking the cabin and forcing the Norwegianers to fight back against the undead.
Okay, so I think we got your take on it, but what should people expect?
A good balance of horror and humour. A lot of times when you have a horror comedy, it tends to be a little too silly, which can take you out of the experience a bit. Seed of Chucky springs instantly to mind in this case. This movie has a much better balance in that regard, never forgetting it's a horror movie while still having plenty of fun. And given the rather silly subject matter, that's quite an impressive feat to pull off. Director Tommy Wirkola has plenty of experience in this field with movies like Kill Bulljo, a Kill Bill parody. So it's clear this was in the hands of someone who knew how to combine gore with giggles. Great blood and gore effects. This movie holds little back in terms of its kill scenes, both practical and CG assisted. Some of my favourite include a guy getting his head ripped in half by the mouth, and near the end of the film, this poor dude has all 4 limbs simultaneously ripped off, like he lost 2 rounds to Noob Saibot in Mortal Kombat 9. It's that level that shows that this was made with a more tongue-in-cheek mindset, as I mentioned, but still manages to be shocking. An old-school homage. Watching this movie, you can tell there was a lot of inspiration going into it from movies like Evil Dead, Friday the 13th, April Fool's Day, Brain Dead or Dead Alive for you Americans, and even a little bit of Leprechaun thrown in there. Seeing things like this in a modern horror movie always brings a smile to my face, as I can tell it was made by people who did have a lot of love for the genre, and are not just in it to make a quick buck. One could accuse it of being lazy, but to each their own, I guess.
Takk for kaffen.
Well, I've said it before, when it comes to horror movies, our Norwegian neighbors to the west just simply pull it off a little bit better, and Dødsna is a perfect example of this. This amount of gore, love for the genre, and just general fun with filmmaking is nice to see from our western neighbors, as our Swedish genre films tend to be more serious. This is hardly an original film, despite the setting and production. I mean, for all we know, the production company bought the rights on the two words Nazi zombies alone. Despite that, it's a really fun film that doesn't take itself too seriously and works as a solid, bloody love letter to the genre.
Well, that wasn't so hard. So let's see how you handle taking on an Aussie horror movie.
Less zombies, just as much gore and violence, let's get to it. The Loved Ones is a 2009 horror thriller from Australia directed by Sean Byrne, who also directed the lesser-known 2015 horror film The Devil's Candy, and not really a whole lot else. The film stars homegrown talent Samuel Xavier, who apparently had a role in some of the Twilight films and a small role in the hit Fury, and not really a whole lot else. The film also stars Robin McLeavy, who had a small part in Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, and once again, not really a whole lot else. Alright, so to be fair, star power isn't really the drawing force of this film, as I've never really heard of any of the people involved before. But I don't know, Fedora, are these people more known in Australia?
Can't say the actors are ringing too many bells here, but from what I can see, this guy looked like he wanted to be Heath Ledger when he grew up.
Well, whether you knew them before or not, you probably will after all the trauma you'll go through. Xavier plays Brent, a young man dealing with the death of his father and his depressed mother, in the classic superhero brooding way we've come to expect from every protagonist ever. He's at least taking his girlfriend Holly to the dance, which is nice, while avoiding his weirdo classmate Lola, and until the school prom, I guess he's doing what most Australians do, hang out in the outback. Anyway, his chill time is cut short as he's knocked out, kidnapped, and taken to Lola's house, who, along with her father, is apparently deeply, deeply disturbed, violent, and homicidal, setting up some kind of messed up mock prom in a family gathering that could just as easily be called the Australian Chainsaw Massacre.
Say happy.
Happy.
Yep, so Brent has been tied up and is now the unwilling entertainment to a crazy family at a fucked up torture party. Not one to spend his last days covered in blood and glitter, Brent needs to do everything in his limited power to get through the bizarre treatment and torture, or die trying.
And a lucky last.
And that's basically where I'm gonna leave it, because you shouldn't really know any more about it than I've already said to get the most out of it, and I would actually also recommend not watching the trailer because I do feel like it shows a little too much of some of the juicier parts later on. This is obviously a very violent and brutal film, but god damn is it well made, well directed, and very well acted. Both Xavier and McLeavy do a fantastic job with their performances, both very different yet similar at the same time in their portrayal. Obviously McLeavy is much more bitten by the crazy bug, but both Loda and Brent are deeply troubled by childhood trauma and are in their own way very tortured people. The violence in this film is brutal and visceral, not glamorous in the least, and shot in a way where I found myself squirming and grasping my own body parts in response to what was happening on the screen. The film does have a bit of a twist, which makes the movie even darker, and while some people might be able to figure it out ahead of time, I still really liked it.
Okay, let's not dive into any twist endings here, so what can we expect from this?
Well, I'm glad you asked. Awful Aussie horror. Okay, so now this isn't awful in terms of quality, but awful in terms of content. There's some truly horrible things that happen to people with varying degrees of innocence. It's shocking, it's disturbing, But to be fair, it's not really too extreme when compared to other films of a similar nature. That said, there is a lot of really dark humor that is well blended with the tension, leading you from squirming to chuckling in just a few seconds.
It was so funny.
So if you've seen films like the French flicks Inside or High Tension, or even the earlier mentioned Wolf Creek, then this struggle for survival should really be nothing new for you.
Do you want some?
Excellent talent. If you have a hard time handling violence and gore, then it won't come as any consolation that all the horrible things that happen are extremely well shot and acted. Director Sean Byrne takes a very up-close and intimate approach to filming and balanced the darkly humorous themes just well enough for the violence not to get too excessive, and of course the film does illustrate some social issues such as how we're formed by parents and surroundings. It brings up themes of loneliness, isolation, and other relevant social issues. Overall, all the components from visuals to acting to soundtrack come together in one excellently violent package. A great horror villain. So Samuel Xavier is pretty damn good as our tortured protagonist, but McLeavy really steals the show with her psychotically naive and somehow slightly sympathetic performance. She's got everything needed to be a classic horror villain, from characterizing outfits and weapons to a personality that screams cult classic.
Right. Cry.
She's a sadistic, fucked up freak, but she's so alone that in some way you almost feel sorry for her. Basically, this is a character well worth remembering and praying to God you don't ever run into.
Damn it, these reviews have been far too positive. Stop blowing the movie all day and say something critical already.
Hey, as an internet critic, it's basically my job to bitch about unnecessary things. Let's give it a go. Okay, so this is actually a little tough because pretty much everything is very well done, but if I'm gonna nitpick, I guess that Lola's family were perhaps a little cliche and without the same unique fucked up identity that she had. The ending wasn't really as strong as I'd hoped and was perhaps a little bit over the top, but it didn't really bother me too much. Overall, I feel this is a great film that accomplishes everything it sets out to do with a sense of style and confidence that a truly skilled director would have. With dark violence, themes, and humor, this film sure turned out to be one I loved. But hey, maybe the grass is greener on the other side. Fedora, what did you think of The Loved Ones?
Well, apart from the wear and tear on my copy of the movie, I thought it was really good as well. I found the incest stuff a bit cringy, but then again, it was obviously supposed to be, and I felt there might have been a little inspiration in there from Stephen King's Misery. There was a lot of book elements to it, and then there was a shotgun and a cop involved at the end as well. That could have been a coincidence, but I noticed it. But in all honesty, Seb, thanks a lot for having me on the show. I want to wish you and all your fans a terrific Halloween, and stay off screen for me.
Alright, so that about does it for this special episode of Sci-Fi Night. Obviously, we want to give a huge thank you to our buddy Fedora. If you're not already subscribed to his channel, what are you doing? Come on, it's like a horror version of Nostalgia Critic, but with so much unique identity and flair. Seriously, check it out, you won't regret it. So, that goes for the third episode of Sci-Fi Night Halloween 2017. We got some more stuff coming up. We hope you'll enjoy it. We hope you enjoyed this. Leave us some comments below letting us know what you thought of the two movies we brought up. And, as always, I'll catch you guys next time.
Happy, happy Halloween, Halloween, Halloween. Happy, happy Halloween, silver shamrock. Happy, happy Halloween, Halloween, Halloween. Happy, happy Halloween, silver shamrock.
It's almost time, kids. The clock is ticking. Be in front of your TV sets for the horror.
Open up for the aeroplane.